sound rises beneath an army's feet that no soldier wants to hear in the middle of a battle. A crack, then another, then 100 at once. Hundreds of knights, encased head to toe in steel, are standing on a frozen lake that was never meant to hold them. They came here certain of victory. They are about to learn the ground itself was the enemy's real weapon. This is not a legend. This is not exaggeration passed down through centuries of storytelling. This actually happened on a specific lake, on a specific day, and the man who planned it knew exactly what the ice would do before a single sword was drawn. By the end of this video, you will understand why a 21-year-old commander, with no major victories yet to his name, chose to fight on a frozen lake instead of solid ground. You will learn why the heaviest, most heavily armored soldiers in Europe were the worst possible army to lead onto thin ice. And you will learn how a single battle fought in the dead of winter helped decide whether Western Europe or the Mongol-dominated East would shape the future of Russia. This is 1242, the year a battle plan was built entirely around the weather. In the early 13th century, the city-state of Novgorod sits in a uniquely dangerous position. To its east, the Mongol Empire has just conquered most of Russia, demanding tribute and submission. To its west, the Catholic military orders of the Baltic, most notably the Teutonic Knights, see this moment of chaos as the perfect opportunity to expand their territory and convert the Orthodox Christian population of Novgorod by force. Caught between two existential threats, Novgorod turns to a young prince named Alexander, already known by the title Nevsky after an earlier victory against Swedish forces along the Neva River. Alexander makes a calculated and controversial decision. He submits to the Mongols, paying tribute and accepting their overlordship, judging correctly that the Mongols, despite their brutality, are primarily interested in tribute and control, not religious conversion or permanent occupation. The Teutonic Knights are a different kind of threat entirely. They do not simply want tribute. They want the land, the church, and the soul of every person living on it. In the winter of 1242, the Teutonic Knights, along with allied forces, advance into Novgorod's territory, capturing the fortress town of Pskov. Alexander must now face them directly. The Teutonic Knights represent the most advanced heavy cavalry in Europe at this time. A fully armored knight, combined with his horse's own armor and equipment, can weigh well over 300 pounds, concentrated on 4 narrow hooves. This weight is devastating in open battle. A charging line of heavy cavalry can shatter infantry formations through sheer momentum and force, and for decades this tactic has made the Teutonic Order nearly unstoppable across the Baltic region. Alexander recaptures Pskov through a swift surprise assault, but he knows retaking one town is not the same as winning the war. The main Teutonic force, along with allied Baltic troops, is still in the field, confident, and looking for a decisive battle to crush Novgorod's resistance permanently. Alexander withdraws his forces toward Lake Peipus, a massive frozen body of water marking the border between Novgorod's territory and the lands controlled by the Knights. He has a plan, and the plan depends entirely on something the Teutonic commanders have not properly considered. Alexander's forces are primarily lighter infantry and lighter cavalry, equipped for mobility rather than brute force. They are also, crucially, local. Many of his soldiers and scouts have lived along this lake their entire lives. They know precisely which areas of the ice are thick and stable, and which areas, closer to underwater currents and natural springs, remain dangerously thin even in the depths of a Russian winter. The Teutonic Knights, by contrast, are largely foreign crusaders and converted Baltic peoples, unfamiliar with the specific dangers of this particular lake. Alexander positions his forces on the eastern shore, choosing his ground near a section of the lake known locally for unstable ice, close to a rocky outcropping called Raven's Stone. He arranges his army with deliberately weaker forces at the center and stronger forces concentrated on the flanks, the exact opposite of conventional battlefield wisdom, where commanders typically reinforce the center to prevent it from being broken. This formation is not a mistake, it is bait. The Teutonic Knights favor a battle formation historians often describe using the German term meaning pig's head or boar's snout, a tightly packed wedge of heavily armored knights designed to punch directly through the weakest point of an enemy line. On the morning of April 5th, 1242, the Teutonic army advances exactly as Alexander anticipated, driving their wedge formation directly into the weakened center of his army. The center gives way, just as Alexander intended. The heavy cavalry pushes deep into the gap, their momentum carrying them further and further from the safer, thicker ice closer to shore, and further into the section of the lake Alexander specifically chose for its instability. As the Teutonic wedge becomes fully committed and overextended, Alexander's flanking forces, held in reserve precisely for this moment, move to encircle the advancing knights from both sides. The knights, trained for a straightforward frontal collision, suddenly find themselves surrounded on three sides, their formation no longer able to use its primary advantage of forward momentum and weight, and beneath their feet, the lake has begun to change. As the battle intensifies and hundreds of armored men and horses concentrate their combined weight onto a relatively small section of already weakened ice, contemporary chronicles describe a sound spreading through the chaos of combat, the unmistakable cracking of ice under impossible strain. Some historians debate exactly how significant a role the ice itself played compared to the tactical encirclement, since contemporary accounts vary in detail and were often written decades after the battle for political and religious purposes. What is consistently recorded across multiple sources, however, is that the ice did break in places, and that knights in heavy armor, once submerged, faced almost certain death, unable to swim or even stand in freezing water, weighed down by hundreds of pounds of steel. Panic spreads through the Teutonic ranks faster than any sword could. Soldiers trained for years in disciplined formation, find that discipline meaningless against an enemy that cannot be fought back against, simply the water itself and the cold. The wedge that was designed to be unstoppable on solid ground becomes a death trap on breaking ice. While portions of the Teutonic force struggle against the breaking ice itself, Alexander's flanking troops complete their encirclement of the knights who remain on more stable ground. Without the ability to retreat in an organized formation and unable to break out through Alexander's reinforced flanks, the Teutonic force begins to collapse entirely. Some knights are killed in direct combat. Others, attempting to flee across the ice, fall through weakened sections and drown under the weight of their own armor, unable to free themselves in time. Historical accounts vary significantly on the exact casualty numbers. Medieval chronicles on both sides were known to exaggerate for political effect, and modern historians treat the specific figures with appropriate caution. What remains undisputed is the outcome itself. The Teutonic invasion force is decisively defeated, its momentum completely broken, and any remaining survivors retreat westward in full disorder. Alexander has just defeated the most feared heavy cavalry force in the region, not primarily through superior numbers or even superior weaponry, but through a battle plan built entirely around terrain, weather, and an intimate local knowledge of a single lake. The battle on the ice, as it becomes known, halts the eastward expansion of the Teutonic Knights into Orthodox Christian Russian territory for generations. It is not simply a single tactical victory, it represents a turning point in determining how far Western Catholic crusading military orders could push their influence into Eastern Orthodox lands. For Novgorod and the broader Russian principalities still recovering from Mongol conquest, this victory ensures that at least the Western religious and cultural identity of the region remains intact, even while political and military submission to the Mongols continues for generations afterward. Alexander Nevsky's earlier political decision to submit to Mongol authority rather than fight a war on two fronts simultaneously is directly validated by this victory. By choosing which threat to resist and which to temporarily accept, he preserves both his people's physical survival under Mongol rule and their distinct religious and cultural identity against Western religious conquest. This dual legacy, pragmatic submission to one threat, decisive resistance to another, becomes central to how Alexander Nevsky is remembered in Russian history for the next 8 centuries. Over subsequent centuries, the battle on the ice becomes one of the most mythologized military victories in Russian history, retold and reinterpreted to serve the political needs of each successive era. The most famous modern depiction comes from Sergei Eisenstein's 1938 film Alexander Nevsky, produced under Stalin specifically as propaganda warning against the growing threat of Nazi Germany, deliberately drawing a direct visual and thematic parallel between medieval Teutonic Knights and modern German invaders. The film's dramatic, climactic, ice-breaking sequence is so visually powerful that it has shaped popular imagination of the battle more than any surviving medieval account, leading many people today to assume the ice-breaking was the primary cause of the Teutonic defeat, rather than one significant factor among several, including tactical encirclement and superior local knowledge of terrain. Alexander Nevsky himself is later canonized as a saint by the Russian Orthodox Church. His legacy permanently fused with the defense of Orthodox Christianity against Western Catholic expansion, a designation his own contemporaries could not have fully predicted from a single winter battle on a frozen lake. What makes 1242 remarkable is not simply that an army won a battle against a technologically superior opponent. It is that victory came from a commander who understood something his enemies did not. That the most dangerous weapon on a battlefield is not always a sword, a lance, or an armored horse. Sometimes it is the ground itself, understood intimately by one side and completely foreign to the other. The Teutonic Knights brought centuries of refined heavy cavalry tactics, superior individual armor, and battlefield experience earned across multiple crusading campaigns throughout the Baltic region. Alexander brought local knowledge of ice thickness, water currents, and a willingness to sacrifice his own center formation as deliberate bait. In the end, hundreds of pounds of steel armor, the very advantage that made Teutonic Knights nearly unstoppable on solid ground, became the precise weight that ice simply could not hold. The battle that began as a contest of arms and tactics ended as a story about understanding your environment more completely than your enemy ever could, a lesson that would echo through Russian military thinking for centuries afterward, long after the specific details of the battle itself faded into legend, propaganda, and myth. 1242. The year an army's greatest strength became the exact weakness that destroyed it, and a young commander proved that knowing the ground beneath your feet can matter more than anything you carry into battle. If this story made you think, leave a comment. Do you think Eisenstein's famous film exaggerated the role of the ice, or does the legend match the history closer than we assume? Subscribe to the Vault of Numbers. Every week, one number, one story history forgot to tell you. The next number in the vault. A king took 300 men to a narrow mountain pass. He knew they would not come back. He went anyway. The vault remains open.